Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Lloyd and I source cars for people on a professional basis. Although most of the cars I source are between £1,000 and £5,000, very often I've been asked to show something a little bit cheaper on the channel, and so I came up with No Budget Reviews, the series where we look at cars that you can buy in good condition with an MOT for under £1,000 and you can enjoy driving. We don't film this in an expensive manner, we don't use separate microphones, we don't use fluid head tripods, we don't even use a DSLR, but we do have a lot of fun. Sometimes, viewers, delayed gratification is palpable, and certainly on this episode of No Budget Reviews it is. This is a 1996 Rover 2.6 SE Cabriolet. I think actually in a brochure you'd find this as the Rover 1.6 Cabriolet at this time, but everybody calls them 2.6 Cabriolets. This was until very recently owned by Mr. Richardson from the Furiousdriving channel, and appropriately we are at the Furiousdriving social event up at the Motorist, which is just near Leeds, a place called Sherburn in Elmet. Mr. Chris James, who has supplied a vast number of cars for No Budget Reviews and sensible second-hand classics over the course of the last year, currently owns this car, although it is actually available for sale, which is nice. The car has had a comprehensive renovation, new hood. It's had the sort of rear plinth there for number plate replaced. It's had some new tyres. It's had a new wing. We'll look at a sheet of paper that will detail some of the most recent work on this car, but a lot of you will be familiar with this car anyway from the couple of years it's spent on the Furiousdriving channel. I actually remember the day after Mr. Richardson bought this car, because we were filming my mother's Mercedes in Hampshire in May 2020, and I remember him saying how much he'd paid for it. So although this car is worth considerably more than No Budget Reviews money, I think you can still pick sort of rough one of these up for that kind of money. You certainly could at the time, and so think of this as like a legacy episode of No Budget Reviews, because during his ownership I wasn't actually able to have a go in the car, but it looks just beautiful with all this new paint and on these wheels and everything. The SE got this leather interior, this being a what they call sort of like a facelift. It's not really a facelift in the traditional sense, because sort of after 1994 all the cabriolets looked like this. The early ones didn't have that sort of grille on the front, but this car dates from 96, and for the 96 model year they put in a new dashboard and introduced the 1.6 K series engine to the car. I'm pleased to say that this alarm mobiliser works just fine. In fact, everything works in here, which is really good. So this is the dashboard out of the R3 Rover 200. It's not the original one which would have come with the car. We're actually going to be looking at a car with that original dashboard, which is a 5-door 200 owned by Mr. Harwood from Rover Joe channel a little bit later. But we've got this interior. It's not quite a beige leather interior, but I still like it. We've got bits of wood here. This is a I think this is the R65 Peugeot-derived gearbox, which actually feels okay. They do get a little bit floppy in sort of later life. This car's done 84,000 miles, so it's not really surprised, but actually it drives really well. We've even got a control for the stereo down there, which is actually an MP3 unit. We'll have a look at this sheet that Chris has here. There we go, MOT February 2023. This car's recently on Furiousdriving, £4,000 spent. Full respray, brand new roof, shot blast and powder-coated wheels, new tyres, serviced. I think there was a cam belt put on it as well. Yes, there was. New battery, brakes, disc and pad, alternator, water pump, replacement ECU, mobiliser, reprogrammed keys, replacement fuel pump. That was a pain. And this interior has been reconditioned and painted. Even these vents have been changed. So definitely a very good example after you know, many hours and thousands of pounds spent on it. Mirror adjuster, of course, is from the Rover 800, I think, actually, originally was from that. The electric window switches show with R8s from earlier, as well as the door handles. It's quite comfortable, actually. Probably because you've not got any roof, and I'm just going to leave the top down today. I'm not going to fiddle around too much with the roof and stuff, because I imagine a lot of you have seen the roof go up and down on this car anyway, but it's not really what we're going to be doing. In fact, what we'll do first of all is open the boot, which I think I might need the key for, because that's just for the fuel release, so might need the key for that. So we will get that out and take a look. There we go, just open her up. As you can see, you can fit a fair amount of stuff actually in this car. We've got all the sort of gear that Chris has to going to shows, and a bit of oil and stuff, anything you might need. It's quite a big space. It's a little bit like one of these Renault coupes though, in the sense that there is quite a sort of narrow opening, but the capacity is quite big. Be really careful actually not to leave the keys anywhere near the boot. We'll just put them here, because I do not want to be stranded, because otherwise you are absolutely subtly screwed. Okay, what we'll try to do now is get in the back, which we're going to have to do through the passenger side, because Chris's child has come along the Halford seat, so we'll go in that way. Okay, viewers, that seat doesn't actually move forward, which is interesting. I'll just watch myself on the seat belt. That could be a bit of a drama if I get that wrong, but there we go. I'll just move myself down. Well, that's okay, I can put my feet underneath the seats and things, but yeah, it's a bit tight. It's a bit tight. I've got infinite headroom though, which is good. I've even got my own little window winder, so I can put the window up and down as I please. Isn't that nice? Storage area just here. I've actually got some map pockets as well. Some speakers. It's only a 4-seater, but as you can see, it's very practical for a child seat. Note on there, you've actually got a passenger airbag as well on here, which wasn't possible on the earlier R8 models. You can't put a passenger airbag in that old dash. Right, I suppose we can have a look at the engine. So, this is the 1.6 K series engine, which develops 110 horsepower. Other engine options on this car earlier on were the 1.4 version of the engine, although by the time the new dash and things came in for the 96 model year, that was no longer an option, and neither was the Honda D series engine, which a lot of other R8s got as well. In that case, generating 122 horsepower, I think, because I think it was the twin cam version that the convertible got with the 216 before this, I'm going to call it a facelift, came on. Although I could be wrong, it could have been the single overhead cam one, in which case it would have been about 115 horsepower. But yes, do say in the comment section which one of those is correct, because I wasn't quite sure myself. I do like this facelifted front end that came in. Yes, around sort of 94 it would have come in on all the R8s. The 400s got it first in 1993. Also, I'd say for the 93 model year, it was October 92. It just looks so smart, this car. All the work that's been done to it makes it look just fantastic. Right, I suppose it's time to do what I wanted to do 2 years ago and go out for a drive. Lloyd Vehicle Consulting stickers, t-shirts and mugs are available by clicking the link to the Google form in the video description below. Right viewers, it's time to put Quentin through his paces. I do apologise if there are any wind noise. There is likely to be some, so I'll put the windows up in just a second. That should sort of get rid of some of it, but I don't really know. But also I've got this little air freshener thing dangling just off the mirror. You can't see it, but it's there. That might be a bit loud as well. But yes, R65 gearbox in this car reminds me very much a lot of driving an R3 Rover 200, and that's no surprise because they share the same engine and gearbox, and also the entire front structure is exactly the same for both of these cars, and we've got an R3 dash in here as well. But the alloy wheels make a real difference to the way that an R8 drives, and this drives really well. Engine's just got the right amount of power. Obviously, some people swap engines into these. I mean, you could fit into the engine bay of this anything from a 1.4, and of course there were some 1.4s made from 92 onwards, up to the 220 turbo. I don't know if anyone's actually ever made a 220 turbo cabriolet, but it's theoretically possible to do that, even though we never offered that as standard. I love the revvy characteristic of the K series. Obviously, as many of you would have seen on the channel, the R3 Rover 200 VI that I am hoping to drive at some point in my life has recently had a new cam belt, just like this actually, and water pump. And the expert in these matters that was brought in to do that was Mr. Coleman, rubbish mechanic, who has done, I don't know, 200 to 300 cam belts on a Rover K series engine. He works on my 45 V6 as well, that you would have seen. And he says always use an original spec head gasket, Lotus Elise Type 1 or Victor Wright's. Make sure that the person knows what they're doing, does it properly, and if necessary have the head skimmed by somebody who's competent in that area. And actually you can sometimes get more power from doing that from these engines. Obviously rust, mobiliser issues, fuel pumps can go, but I think this is a fantastic car. I'm absolutely loving driving it for the first time, and I remember when Mr. Richardson was able to do that himself, because obviously the car spent a long time, I think, rotting on a driveway, although actually the rust is non-existent on the underside of this car. It's not there, and there's nothing on the outside either after this respray, and it just feels like a joy to drive a car like this. Steering is very positive, body roll's not too bad. Sort of reminds me of the 2.6 coupe that Mr. Chris James also has, that I drove on No Budget Reviews last year, sort of completing a series in the 3 R3s that he's owned over the last year. And it's a shame that Chris has to give this up, but he says that he needs an automatic car really, and this of course being a manual. You could get an automatic one of these in both the earlier version and the later version. The earlier version of course was with the good old Honda D series engine and 4-speed auto, and the later one was actually with a CVT gearbox. I have driven a Rover R3 with that gearbox in it. I'd probably go for the manual if it's a K series. An automatic with Honda engines, no problem. I've owned 2 of those myself. But yes, viewers, you can probably see that I'm enjoying myself tremendously. I do hope that you can hear me above all the sort of wind noise and everything else that's going on. Unfortunately, I had too much fun to want to put the roof up, and that's just the way it goes sometimes.
So viewers, should you consider a Rover 200 Cabriolet or Rover 1.6 Cabriolet with your hard-earned budget up to £1,000? Well, it's a very tricky question, really. The examples that you would find for under £1,000 these days would not be anywhere as good as this. They would probably need a cam belt, maybe a head gasket. If it's a Honda D series, you probably have things like cam cover gasket leaks, that sort of stuff. So I would advise you probably in this instance to pay a little bit more. This car's up for £3,500, maybe not as much as that. This is one of the best examples though in the country, I reckon, after all this work that's been done. But why not? They're only sort of going down in number, and they're reasonably practical. R8s are a very, very good choice for a starter classic in general. This one just sort of proven to me that it's been worth the 2-year wait. Anyway, thank you ever so much indeed for watching this episode of No Budget Reviews. Thank you to Mr. James for letting me have a go in this. Thank you to Mr. Richardson, of course, for actually purchasing this car in the first place from Matt Driveway. And we'll see you again soon for more inexpensive motoring.